Let me tell you that you're gonna hear me taken to task, I think, in the next segment with a woman named Melissa Zamora, whose blog is Blogging All Things Brownsville. And if you're if you don't know what a blog is, you're hopelessly out of fashion, and we're going to tell you what that is. And they can be important, they can be entertaining, they can be awfully dull. We'll find out in just a second. Let me read you this from one of our favorite websites, RioGrandeGuardian.com, which is now free. It used to be a paid website. It's now free. And they do two things. One, they do their own reporting on various items. And number two, they link to news stories principally in South Texas and Texas, but also anything national which affects us in any way. And they have columns from people. And there's one written by the owner, the co-owner, Melinda Barrera, called La Chancla. And chancla is the what do you call it? Shoe sandal. That's a sandal. And this is what a woman named Melissa Zamora of bloggingallthingsbrownsville.com wrote. She says, this is back in November. And I don't know if you remember that far back, but Glenn Beck, our morning talk show guy, was on a rampage, and he was just convinced that we were shooting each other wholesale. And darn sure can't trust the Mexicans to with our $1.4 billion to work on the drug trade, and we got to build the wall, and we're being swamped, and it's just one thing after another. Anyway, then he got into a big fight with Henry Cuellar, the congressman from Laredo, who it happens that his brother, Cuellar's brother, is running against the sitting sheriff of Webb County, who's on the Glenn Beck program. Anyway, how does Davis Rankin differ from Glenn Beck? Well, to begin with, I don't have a $50 million radio deal, which Beck's just signed. Rankin has been known to spout off anti-immigrant talk. That's not true, and he lives on the border. I vividly recall his comments on the Elvira Arellano story. She's the undocumented immigrant who has taken up sanctuary in a Chicago church to avoid being separated from her U.S.-born son. She was eventually deported to Mexico. I call her cold and calculating, which she was. She was playing us like a drum. And that as a criminal, her crime being that she's an illegal immigrant, she should face the consequences of her actions. Anyway, we have Melissa on the line. This is her day off, but she's working today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Did you get what you wanted?
Absolutely. Santa was very good to me.
Cool. Why does Brownsville have more blogs about it than McAllen, since the chamber would tell you that we're the center of the universe up here, number one. Number two, for old people, what's a blog?
A blog is a website where anyone could create one and write about anything that they want to. They can write about their life, they can write about politics, and of course mine generally revolves around politics. And like you mentioned, we have several blogs revolving around Brownsville and Cameron County in general. So that should tell you about the state of affairs here in this area. People are very interested and want to remain civically engaged, and I think that really says a lot about the people here. We stay involved, and we want to encourage others to be involved about what happens here. So, how long have you been doing Blogging All Things Brownsville? About 2 years, off and on. For the past year, I'd say I've been doing it probably several times a day. I have a post up. Wow. So, we're happy to talk about Glenn Beck, but you don't really think, now that you've had a chance to think about it over the holidays, you don't really think I'm like Glenn Beck, do you? Well, I think your comments that day, when you talked about Elvira's plight, they were very, how can I put it, you weren't very compassionate. No, with her, I don't have any compassion at all, I'll be honest with you. And I think that clearly demonstrated, to me anyway, where you stood on immigration issues. And that was very interesting to me, considering that you are a media entity that's located here on the border. Did you get any kind of reaction to it? I mean, because one of the things about blogs is, for people who don't know, you can post a reply. If Melissa writes something you think is terrific, you can go on there and say, boy, you hit the nail on the head. Or if you think she's full of baloney, boy, Melissa, you're sure full of baloney today. I mean, that it has an immediacy which even radio rivals radio, and that's one of the good things about radio in general is it's very, very immediate, and certainly much more immediate than television. Anybody reply? Oh, yes, we had several comments. I did post a letter to you on my blog in August, I believe, when I first heard it. And we had several comments. Mostly were supporting me and agreed with me about your comments being cold and calculating. But, of course, there were a few that supported you. And I don't filter any of those. I put them all out there until they become rather derogatory or libelous in nature. That's when I hold comments back. But there were some interesting comments there.
This, of all the issues, I was talking with a guy just before I came here. He said he's kind of tired of hearing about the wall. He said, of course, he's not for it. You know, he doesn't think it's a good thing. He said it hadn't stopped him before. I was a little bit surprised by his remarks, but the key thing is he's a little bit tired of hearing about it, and I think I get tired of hearing about it, too. Unlike the national guys like Beck or Hannity or O'Reilly who just talk about the same thing 5 days a week. 2 hours a day, same thing 5 days a week. That's 10 hours of the same thing. I'd go nuts if I had to do that. But this one just won't go away. It won't go away.
No, and I kind of agree. You know, I'm a bit tired of it myself, and I don't think it's because we're being apathetic. It's because we realize that if they build this wall, it's not going to do anything. How is it going to deter anyone from crossing over? Who do you think is going to build the wall to begin with?
Whoever gets the contract. You think it's going to be illegals building the wall?
Well, everyone's saying that, but I'm just saying the reason why people are getting tired of hearing this argument about the wall is that we truly feel down here that it's not really going to have an impact on us. Therefore, all these millions and millions of dollars, I mean, what is it, $46 billion to be spent on this fence are going to go for naught because we're still going to have illegal immigration regardless.
Well, let me throw this chunk at you, and then we'll take a quick break. My experience is that when you say you're opposed to the border wall, people say, well, we've got to do something. They believe, a lot of the callers think if you're against the wall, you're not against illegal immigration. If you're against the wall, you're for illegal immigration. We got to do something about it. And I said, well, I'm right there with you. The two don't go hand in hand, but people seem to think that they do. Think about that. And also, listeners, if you have a question for Melissa Zamora, bloggingallthingsbrownsville.com, 800-580-8255, 800-580-TALK. We tried to avoid anything serious today, but it just won't let us go. We'll talk in the next hour with Monica Weisberg-Stewart about the push back the deadline to get that passport. You don't have to go stand in line right now. You're listening to The Drive Home. You're listening to The Drive Home. This is the Davis Rankin Show. Melissa Zamora comments up to a couple of times a day, several times a day, at bloggingallthingsbrownsville.com about what goes on in Brownsville. And she also took me to task back in November about illegal immigration. This was when Glenn Beck was in full-throated roar about the border, need for the border fence, and how dangerous it is and how we got to do something. And I don't get a chance to listen, so I heard a little bit of it. Caller wants to know, a guy named Joel, Melissa, how many people against the border wall live in a gated community? Now, I don't know how you're supposed to know that sort of thing, but I promised I would ask you.
How many people live in a gated community?
Yeah. I think what he's being snide is what he's doing.
Oh, of course. Well, there's not a fence in my front yard, but I do lock my door. That's all I can say.
You sleep with a gun?
No guns in the home. No, none at all. But of course, we all want some sense of protection. But how is a fence going to protect us from illegal immigration?
Well, the first question is: Do you think that is there a problem? Number one, should something be done about it? Some people don't think there's a problem, and other people think that the problem is that people who need to work can't get in here without getting caught by the cops.
Well, that's true. But I don't know if you had an opportunity to take a look at the draft of the environmental impact statement that everyone's
I have it. I dropped
about.
it on my foot and had to go to the night clinic.
Oh, yes. But if you just look at the first page, it says that the whole purpose is to prevent terrorists and terrorist weapons from entering the United States. But we have a Border Patrol chief here that said the fence is simply going to slow down illegal crossers by minutes. It's basically a $46 billion speed hump. That's what this fence is.
Well, and what's wrong with that? I mean, you slow them down, they rip out their transmission, and then the Border Patrol gets to get them.
Well, the whole point is that our immigration policies have so many potholes. Why not fix the potholes first?
I don't know. I'm not in that case. I'm not a good one to argue with because I think the money should be spent somewhere else. But I do think there is an immigration problem in the sense there's too many people coming in. We don't know who they are. I don't think that terrorism is absent from that equation. But I think the primary reason for doing something on the southern border is to keep all the Mexicans and Salvadorans and Guatemalans out. But nobody wants to say that. I believe that to be true. From my producers looking at me like I've lost my mind. I think there's a terrorism component to it, but that's not the only thing about it.
Another problem we have is that we have our immigrants who are having American-born children, and they have no path to legal status, or the path is broken.
Well, we'd like to see that woman, what was her name? Elvira Arellano. She came over. She was ordered to be deported. They told her to leave. She didn't leave. She stayed and got pregnant and had a child. There's been no word of who the father is or where the father's supporting or not supporting Elvira and her child. She was told to leave, and she didn't do it. Then she had the baby. I regard that as gaming the system. And then she complained that she was being put upon. That's when I said she's cold and calculating. I don't think she's some poor woman who got over here and got in trouble and had a child and, oh, woe is me. I think she gamed the system. She played us. And she's not some innocent bystander. She has a political point of view on all this, having been told to leave and didn't, got caught, and then ran off to the church where she hid out for a year. I really don't see how that makes me anti-immigrant.
Well, I don't see. I don't disagree with you. I agree that she came here out of her own, her own benefit. She wanted to be here because she wanted to have her child here. But the fact that you didn't have any regard for the child, that's where I had an issue. And that's where I took you to task. Yeah. It's not that I don't agree with you that she came here and she gamed the system. The problem is that there has to be some sense of compassion regardless for the children who are involved in these predicaments.
Well, this is what happens. This is the first thing I think of when I hear that is then it's as a practical matter, it won't work. Because everybody who has a child who is here illegal, but they have a kid, so the kid's legal, the kid can now bring them all in. They can make them legal. They can give them legal status so they can't be caught and deported. And I think they'll play the system and will be just overrun with people from south of the border. Because the Canadians don't want to come in. I mean, the Canadians are not trying to come in. It's the people from south of the border who are trying to come in. Canada has its own problems with their own screwed-up immigration system, which lets jihadists in and all kinds of people dangerous to us. But as a practical matter, if you are compassionate to people who have children, almost said these people who have children like this, and they do deserve compassion. I do feel compassionate for them. But I take the next step and say the consequence of that compassion will be people who are coming here, who are getting legalized, who don't have a right to be here, but who, because we just can't do it, are now going to be here. Now, I don't know if that's literate. I don't know if that's makes sense or not. Tell you what, if you can hang around for a little bit, we got to get the news on. Tell you what, we'll call you back in 5 minutes because I know you got to do some cleanup work at your desk. This is The Drive Home on KURV. My guest is Melissa Zamora. Her blog is Blogging All Things Brownsville. And we're talking about immigration on her day off, this day after Christmas.
Davis, I agree with you with a prior comment that you made.
Which one?
About it's been a weird day.
I thought you were going to support on my immigration views. No such luck. Melissa Zamora works for a living, and then she blogs. Blogging All Things Brownsville is where she gets to comment and comment on the issues of the day and the personalities of the day, and you can reply to that. Now, how do people find your blog?
They just go online and type in bloggingallthingsbrownsville.com, where they can do a Google search for Brownsville blog, and it should pop up.
Blogin allthingsbrownsville.com.
Yes.
One of the reasons I sort of hesitated calling you is I'm really not all that familiar talking at an extended length about the way I think about things, which is unusual for somebody in the talk show business because they apparently want to talk about themselves for 8 hours a day. But I know that when I say we got to do something about illegal immigration, I sound like the biggest nut, number one, the biggest racist, racist is probably too strong, biggest xenophobe number two. And I know when I do that, Melissa, it just jangles in some people's ears, and I sound very anti-Hispanic, and that's not what I think at all. I do think there's a lot of anti-Hispanic sentiment mixed up in all this. So, what do you think?
Well,
I don't think I'm one of them. You may disagree.
Well, it can definitely be misconstrued as such because look where you live. If you were saying those comments somewhere else up north, it would be rather acceptable. But here in this community, you just kind of get taken off guard because the majority of people who live here are Hispanic or are from Mexico.
Well,
basically, that's what it is in a nutshell.
But why? I mean, why would you essentially say all Hispanic people would believe that people who come over and have babies should be able to come in and follow their children to legal status? I mean, why does one follow the other? Why does your race define your political views, or your ethnicity, better said?
No, it's not that my race defines my political views. It's more of a common sense type of issue. You know, how can you grant a child citizenship here through our system, and then not grant the parent legal status? Well, a child can stay here, but not the parent. It just doesn't make any sense. That's where it comes in that immigration reform is much needed, because those are policies that don't pass the common sense test.
Joel, thank you for calling KURV. What's your comment or question for Melissa Zamora? Joel, you're on the radio.
Yeah, I have a question.
All right.
How do you, being an Hispanic American, second generation, how do you reconcile the cause or the idea that you have people that come across illegally, whereas we have legal immigration? I don't understand how people can say that you can come across without coming across legally, whereas everybody else all over the world has to follow the rules. Yet for some reason, Hispanics don't have to follow the same rules that everybody else does.
All right. What do you think about that, Melissa?
I don't think I ever said that. You know, we want everyone to follow the same rules. What I'm saying is that we need some reform because we have so much illegal immigration coming in through our border. For the same example that I gave, you know, how can you grant U.S. citizenship to a child born here, and yet the parent can't be granted the same citizenship? How can that parent raise that child here, you know, if that person is designated as illegal? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, that's the consequence, but that's the penalty they pay for being here illegally. I mean, there's a consequence has to be paid. The thing that's most frustrating to me about immigration, the most fundamental thing, is the idea that there is no consequence for breaking the law. And you may be one of them who just say, well, that's a silly law. I don't want to pay attention to it. I don't think we should enforce it.
And why have that law altogether? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, there you go.
That's where it comes in, that we need some reform.
Well,
we need some reform, not a $46 billion fence.
Well, how does doing away with the law constitute reform? If the law which keeps people from coming here and becoming legal is an ass, which is taken from an old play, the law is an ass, then let's just do away with the law. But that's not reform. That's
Well, why do you think
surrender.
Elvira came over here to begin with? Because she wanted to have her children here so that they could become U.S. citizens.
Talk about Elvira Arellano, that lady?
Yes, that's the majority. That's the reason why everyone comes over here, basically, because they want to give their children the opportunity to become a U.S. citizen and reap the benefits of one of the best countries in the world. That's why they come here.
Well,
we're allowing them to have their children gain U.S. citizenship, but not the parents. That you see where there's a discrepancy there?
Yeah, but to me the discrepancy makes perfect sense, but obviously not to you, and probably, frankly, not to a lot of people. I'm probably in the minority on that. But to follow that through to its illogical conclusion, if we should welcome all these immigrants who just want to come here and participate and gain the benefits of citizenship in the greatest country on earth, why have any immigration law restricting or governing in any form or fashion immigration at all, other than just having them check in and get their name on a list that they're here, that there would be no restrictions on whoever comes? If one wants to come or a million want to come, it's all the same. No law, no restrictions, no quotas. Yes? No?
We need restrictions. I'm not saying that we don't need restrictions. Everyone can agree that restrictions are needed, but it's the way we come up with those restrictions. It's the process that's flawed. That needs fixed.
That I'll agree with you about. By the way, I'm going to send you by email another picture that we had taken of me, because of this picture you took off our website I really don't like. It makes my ears stick out. But I'm not vain, Melissa. I hope we've done some good and haven't left you frustrated.
No, I'm not frustrated.
Not with me, anyway, I hope.
No.
I've enjoyed it. Let's do it again.
Okay.
And you can read her at La Chancla at RioGrandeGuardian.com or bloggingallthingsbrownsville.com. I just checked it out. That's where that picture of me is. We're going to talk about getting out and seeing the valley from a different point of view right away.